How's Tracy?
Oh, she's good, thank you. Different recordings. Hey, everybody. Actually, there's nobody because I haven't let anybody in. So let me let everybody in. No, Tracy is she's actually in Chicago. She's out on the road again. So everything is good with her. Thank you. Thursday. But as people come in, I will tell you what happened, which most of you already know. I'll turn on the heat a little hotter. I know. Everybody's heard the news about the guy that was killed on the corner of Thousand Oaks and Westlake Boulevard.
Where I used to work.
So there's a Citibank. It's at the Shell, by the Shell station. That's where it happened. So I spoke yesterday with a guy that was with him at the protest. And hey there, Elise. I'm just about to tell people where I'm going from here. So from here, I'm going out to Thousand Oaks, to the corner where Paul Kessler was killed on Sunday. He was hit by a Palestinian protester in the mouth with a megaphone. The story is starting to come out a little bit. It came out last night. He died yesterday. They did not think immediately that he was going to die, but he was. I mean, one of the stories that came out was so ridiculous. It said, one of the headlines was essentially man dies after hitting head during Israel and Palestinian rallies. Hitting head after the man slugged him in the face with a megaphone and he fell down backwards and hit his head and had a hematoma. I mean, they didn't do the autopsy yet, but that's what happened. So that's the headline. I'm looking at it right now. NBC News, man dies after hitting head. Which sounds like, again, I know, but that's the headline from NBC News. And then guess what? NBC News wanted the pictures. And you know what I told them? Stop running dumb headlines like that. Well, I have the pictures. I'm actually going to show you. I'll show them you right now. I have the pictures of what happened, and you can see what happened. Very clear what happened. Ventura County is going to, they've already opened a homicide investigation. They have a press release, a press statement in 1 hour where they're going to come out and tell the public that there's a homicide investigation. Well, I think it will be, but I can tell you, I can tell you this. What is going to happen is you're going to have people, hey, Reverend Lynn, you're going to have people that are going to say, well, let's not rush to judgment. Let's not say it, but I will tell you, I'm going to show you the pictures, and then you're going to be some of the only people in America that have seen these pictures. So we're going to send this. Well, she's my favorite. So anyways, I'm going to show you now the pictures of what happened. I'm going from here, Reverend Lynn, to Thousand Oaks to say Kaddish and to stand at the place where this man was killed on Sunday. He's being buried today. As in he was at a protest for Israel and Palestinians, and the Palestinian protester, I'm going to show you the picture. And again, the only people that have seen this are the news outlets that asked for these photos. So here's some of the few people that have actually seen these photos. Like I said, only the news organizations that we gave permission to see them. Today, at the press conference, we're going to give people access to these photos. But I'll show you some of them right now, and you can see. I mean, again, hey John. So we're just talking about what happened yesterday, and I guess I have to download it first, but I'm going to post them up. To identify what? The press conference is at 10 for the sheriff's department. Ours is at 1 o'clock. So here's, I'm going to share the pictures now for you folks, so you can actually see them. This is what happened. Here's the protester with the megaphone. I can say it because I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a news organization. This is the guy who killed, this is the Palestinian side. This is the guy who came over with another Palestinian protester, and
protesting on behalf of
the Palestinians. And on the other side, there were Jews that were on the other side of the street. And I mean, look, this is the picture. This is the picture now that's been released. This is the one that we released. This is JTA's version of it. But I have these pictures, which again were taken by John, who was there, and both John and Paul were 69 years old. You know, some of the headlines said elderly Jew, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's supposed to elicit sympathy, 62, but 69. So, but the point is that they were, kind of implying that, look, I don't know. As far as I can see, the guy was at the time of his life where he was trying to, enjoy his retirement, and now he's dead. So it's I don't know what to say other than it pains me to tell you that this happened in our community. I mean, it happened in Agora. This is let me just see if I have any other pictures of what's happening here, but I'm downloading the other ones. But yeah, I don't know what to tell you other than, and I'll show you, I don't have a picture of the actual the guy who was there just showed me, he said Inside Edition just showed up at Jim Moret just came over to talk to him, showed up at his door. So I told him just to come at 1.
In a nutshell.
Yep. So in a nutshell, what happened is that there were Jews and Palestinians protesting on opposite sides of Westlake Boulevard. When these two Palestinian protesters came across the street, there were about 3 or 4 Jewish guys that were 60s or 70s that were on the other side. They came up to them, they got in an argument, and the guy with the megaphone hit the guy in the face with the megaphone. He fell backwards, and that's the picture of him lying on the back. They did not think that the guy that I know did not think that he had died, that it was going to be a death blow. He saw his face. They saw that he had some teeth broken, but they did not think, when they took him away in an ambulance, he was communicative, he was responsive. He didn't die there. They took him to the hospital, the Los Robles Hospital, and he died there. And so he died yesterday. And the guy that I was with didn't even know till he showed up at the hospital to visit him, and they told him, the sheriffs need to speak to you, which he had already told the sheriffs he was available. The sheriffs arrested this guy right away who did it. Not a question. So they're going to announce today that their investigation, they're going to announce that it's a hate crime. They announced something on Twitter yesterday. And so this is, I'm going right from here to there. And I've been working with John, because the other guy who was there, because he did not want to talk to the media. And they showed up at his house anyways. They found his address and they showed up at his house. So we said, we'll get everybody together at 1 o'clock, and then we'll talk to the media there. So that's what we're going to do. And my guess is that that's what's going to happen. And I just spoke with, you're the only people who know this. My wife doesn't even know this yet. I spoke with Kenny Ellis, our former cantor, our friend, and he's going to say El Maleh, the prayer for the dead, right there at the place. It's about the same time his funeral's going on, and the rabbi for the synagogue that he works with, he lives there. He lives in Agora, but the rabbi for the synagogue in Thousand Oaks, who's officiating at the service, I think is going to be officiating right around that same time he's being laid to rest. So it's a tough day. It's a day that I thought would happen. I hoped and prayed it wouldn't happen, and it happened. So as long as people are rousing people up and getting people all angry, things like this are going to happen. So listen, to their credit, CARE actually came out already and told people that, came out with a statement saying they don't agree with this. That's the Council for American Islamic Relations. So, but they also said, let's wait to see what happened. Let's basically wait for the investigation, which, that's true. There'll be an investigation, but we're not going to not say anything until then. Who knows how long an investigation is going to take, but hopefully the guy will be brought to justice. That's all I can say. So, no one's advocating for a lynch mob, and no one's advocating for anything other than the justice system to do its job. But
Keep an eye out for yourself and your others.
yeah, and I'm going to say something to that effect. I'm going to tell people it's not the time to not go to protests and not to show your solidarity with Israel, but be careful. Don't go. When there's 3 of you to a rally. That's all I can say. I mean, you can't blame the victim, but at the same time, be careful. Don't do anything stupid. I mean, I'll do stuff stupid, but you don't do anything stupid. I know you don't do anything stupid, right, John? I know. Well, I'm not going to Gaza. I was on the phone with Israel this morning at 3:00 in the morning talking about what that's going to be like. And I promise people it's going to be as safe as it can be. I promised my wife again yesterday that it's going to be as safe as it can be. But
Yeah, I have a question because I was in the restroom. Did the gentleman that died, did he cross?
no,
No,
I showed the picture.
Yeah, no, I saw. I didn't hear.
No, but you saw the picture.
I did, but I didn't know who crossed to who, that's all.
No, you can see the dude, listen, I'm going to show you one more time so you can see it. Because I want this to be really clear in everyone's head. The picture is very clear what happens, okay? Because
You shared the pictures with sheriffs?
yeah,
I know
Is
they
he
were
in custody?
asking.
yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Is he in custody?
What?
Is he in custody?
Yeah, he was in custody immediately. So here's what I'm going to show you, okay? Well, I'm just going to show it one more time. Here you go. Okay? Because this picture is all you need to see. Here's the Palestinian flags. Okay? There's the Palestinian folks. The Jewish folks are over here. These 2 guys are walking from there to here. Do you understand? The picture can't be any clearer. I have a picture too of
That is-
What did it say?
No, I used to work right there.
it's Westlake Boulevard and
Yeah.
Thousand Oaks Boulevard. It's right on that corner. So all I can say is
What time of day?
when did it happen? 3:00.
So you would get the babies.
No, it happened Sunday. He died yesterday.
It was all over the news.
It started last night. It started last night. It was in the LA Times maybe today. I spoke to an LA Times reporter this morning, said maybe it's not because they wanted, and to their credit, legal stuff, they wanted to make sure. Listen, I'll read you. I mean, I'll read you the text. I'll read you the text. The Times. I mean, and then I spoke to them. I said, "Oh, News Nation." I thought I didn't even see it was News Nation that called. It says right here. The guy says, to me, this is Mark Martin from the LA Times photo desk, writing to see if it's possible to get some of the photographs of Paul Kessler at the rally November 5th. Texting because it's early and didn't want to wake you. Happy to give you a call. So I called the guy and I said, "Look, what do you need?" This guy doesn't have time to. He gave me the permission to give to the media because he didn't want to deal with it. Just say you obtained it from JLTV. He says, "Well, we really need to we'd like to get permission from the creator." I said, "Fine, but I can get him on the phone right now, but I don't have time. I was coming here." So anyways, I was just going to show you if I had the you know, if I had the picture, I would have shown you the other picture of him being arrested essentially. So yeah, folks, it's not a good time right now.
ABC7 was pretty clear about what happened.
Yeah, but you know, look, I know that there's legal stuff and you know, I understand. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I know that there are legal things.
With everybody having cell phones, you can cover it with a video.
Well, that's what they're asking.
I think there were. I think there were. The problem is the people who videotaped it, I don't think want that video out. Meaning
You know, it's interesting.
the other side of the
If you
street
look- if you
videotaped
look
it.
at the fellow on the ground.
Yeah.
Being attended to, the gal right who.
Yeah.
She's like, the whole.
Yeah.
thing. So there were people over on that side of the street for sure.
A couple came over. And then I think what happened is when the sheriff came, other people came over. Look, from what I understand, and I'm going to tell you, I mean, like, if you want to know, it sounded like some people on the Palestinian side came over and tried to help after that. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but I do think that there were some people who started freaking out when they saw what happened. I don't think it was intentional. I want to make it clear, but I don't know. And
You strike somebody with a bullhorn.
I will tell you that,
No, he probably didn't intend.
yes, and the problem is, that's the lesson though. If you hit somebody and they die, I mean, the Bible is pretty clear about that too. And because it's since oldest time, if you hit someone in anger and they die, you got a problem. So, there was no need for that to happen. And once it did, look, you know, that's where we are, my friends. So,
People are riled up.
Yeah.
And my older son, who's normally very rational, is irrational. I mean, irrational in his hatred of Palestinians. He's just going bonkers. And I just.
well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. What happens is that, you know, we get into a place where we want simplicity and we want to have like everybody be bad and everybody good. We know, I mean, like instinctively, knowledge, you know, like, you know, you have these different parts of your body and your mind that are going after each other. And it's hard. It's hard to make sense of.
It's dangerous.
Of course. It's hard. But I'm telling you right now, if people care about lives in Gaza, say whatever you want, but say Hamas has to get out of there because they do not, Reverend Lynn said it, they don't care about their people.
And
They
so
don't
many
care about
Israelis
them.
Live in Gaza.
No. And they are not leading people, and they are killing people. So if you care about the Palestinians, if you honestly, genuinely care about the Palestinians and not just hate Israel, pray that Hamas gets dislodged from there somehow. I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you.
As a non-free reader,
Yeah.
this looks very different to me.
Why? What did I do?
Because all the,
Oh, the dots?
yeah,
Is there dots on it that aren't usually there? I don't know, folks. That could be. Hold it a second. Maybe I didn't put it could be. Maybe I didn't have vocalization on before. Was that what? No, I think what it had is it might have had this and not the vowels. I mean, not the trope.
You know what? You know what's difficult for me right now?
What?
Is actually moving forward like the Torah study and. Hard to.
John, there's no question. I'm here right now and not answering the phone. You want to see the text? I'll show you the text from this morning. 1, 2, 3.
Were any of you
4.
watching Fox or CNN before you came over?
Here's a picture of Paul eating pizza. You know?
They had the families, they had many families that.
oh, I did.
That have flown to the capital. I have a colleague, as I'm sure Rabbi can talk to people, and their biggest fear right now in Israel, based on my colleague, is that momentum changes, right? The support changes, right? And he's saying things are starting to put, so these folks flew over to the capital, and it was, you know, I have no idea what people's political alignment is in there or not. That's not a big point, because I watch everything and read it all CNN was actually, showing it. And it is quite crazy, every one of them came up. Fathers, husbands, or wives, just about the murders, the rapes, the kidnapping, Do you know that one guy who thought his daughter, his 9-year-old, was kidnapped, but then he thought she was dead, and he said, "How great, hallelujah." Turns out she's alive, right? And he's an Irish guy. He made
Yeah, I saw the guy.
I tell you, it's
Yeah,
see on CNN, but
one of the things I'm going to actually say today is that kind of glad my dad didn't have to see this. Or my mom, anybody. 2 days from now is going to be the 85th anniversary of Kristallnacht. I thought this was ancient history. So now we're going back 2,600 years history to Ezekiel. It is important because I wanted to make sure that in between dealing with this chaos and other stuff, this, and again, I think maybe even get some inspiration from this because actually, the point where in a couple weeks we're going to read where Jerusalem gets destroyed. Jerusalem hasn't been destroyed, but it's getting close. And the last prophecy we read was really tough because, again, one of the examples of Ezekiel living out the prophecies, we talked about how the beginning, especially in the first few chapters, that Ezekiel actually has to do things to reenact Jerusalem and reenact the exile. His his wife died, and God says you can't mourn for her, and your living this is a lesson to the people that I'm going to desecrate my sanctuary, your pride and glory, the delight of your eyes and the desire of your heart. And this is what he had said about his wife, right? I'm about to take away the delight of your eyes through pestilence. So his wife died of illness, and the city is about to be destroyed. So his wife dying was like a version of Jerusalem destroyed. And the last thing we read, on that day, your mouth shall be open to the fugitive, and you shall speak it no longer be dumb. And that's the last thing we read. And that's the end of his prophecies of judgment. We call it, people call them against Israel. What we're going to read today is his prophecies against the other nations. In particular, he has a lot to say about the Phoenicians, which is weird because that's not like usually our main enemy. It's not a country that we go to normally when we think about the people that Israel and Judah have an issue with. Tyre and Sidon, the Phoenicians, generally are our friends, and they gave us wood for the temple and construction, King Hiram, and they seem like they do business with everybody. Interestingly enough, we'll get to that. You'll see what happens. But first, we start with the normal nations, the nations that surround us. In modern day Jordan, the Ammonites, the Moabites, and the Edomites, in that order: north, center north, mid-north, and then south in the region of today's Jordan. So Ammonites, Moabites, and then Edomites. That's who we're reading about here. And as you're about to see, he'll call them out for what they did. What's going on here? So here's what he says. The word, one second. Somebody just put in the chat. Sandy just said she never, a friend of hers never thought she'd be living in 1939 Germany in the United States. The word of God came to me. O mortal, set your face toward the Ammonites and prophesy against them. Say to the Ammonites, hear the word of the sovereign God. Thus said the sovereign God, because you cried, aha, over my sanctuary when it was desecrated, and over the land of Israel when it was laid waste, and over the house of Judah when it went to exile, which again are all things that have happened thus far, not really the temple necessarily being destroyed, but at this point only desecrated. And again, the land of Israel was laid waste. The northern kingdom was laid waste. And parts of Judah have already been in exile. Assuredly, I will deliver you to the Kedemites as a possession. They shall set up their encampments among you and pitch their dwellings in your midst. They shall eat your produce and they shall drink your milk. And the Kedemites are the people, again, it says Livnei Kedem, the people, the sons of the east, which is another way of saying, and I guarantee you there'll be at least a note. And Mary, yours probably says the Kedemites, right? Oh, it says men of the east. Good. What is yours says men of the east? Yeah. So this one says B'nai Kedem as a people, like the sons. Anytime you see the it, it means the son of. You saw the word B'nai, like is. This case, it means people from the east, which is the Babylonians, other eastern kingdoms. And they're gonna take your stuff, right? I will make Rabbah a pasture for camels and Ammon a place for sheep to lie down, which again is their capital, right? Your capital is going to be turned into a wasteland. You shall know that I am God. For thus said the sovereign God, because you clapped your hands and stamped your feet and rejoiced over the land of Israel with such utter scorn, surely I will stretch out my hand against you and give you as booty to the nations. I will cut you off from among the peoples and wipe you out from among the countries and destroy you. And you shall know that I am God. That's
Who's
the
rejoicing now?
Yeah, that's true. People who rejoice, who are celebrating our destruction, our death. So this did, of course, happen. The Ammonites were wiped out. The only vestige of the Ammonites is capital of Jordan, Ammon, which is Rabbah, this great city that they had. And other than that, there are no people that call themselves Ammonites anymore. They were destroyed. And they were destroyed because of their complicity and their celebration and their taking advantage of our destruction. It's a little different than today because there aren't people who are directly capitalized other than maybe the media, but other than that, there's nobody who's celebrating this because this is good for ratings, my friends. You think the news organizations are at all sad about what's happening right now? All of them are happy right now. Numbers all go up, but that happens whoever it was to. I don't take that personally, but maybe God does. Thus said the sovereign God, because Moab and Seir said, see, the house of Judah is like all the other nations. Assuredly, I will lay bare the flank of Moab, all its towns to the last one. Beth-Yeshimot, Baal-Meon, and Kiritai. Glory of that. Those are their big cities. I'm going to turn those towns into. And what did they do? They did really what it seems is they're basically saying Judah is like everybody else, which doesn't seem that bad, but it's bad enough. And it is from the standpoint of participating. They are part of the people who are capitalizing on what's going on to us at that time. And I will deliver it together with Ammon and Kedemites as their possession. Ammon shall be remembered among the nations, and I will mete out punishments to Moab, and they shall know that I am God. And remember, Ammon and Moab are both descendants of Lot's son. Or Lot's wives/daughters. They're son and grandson. So here they are together. So going back to Genesis, Ammon and Moab together. We don't know that the Ammonites and Moabites thought of themselves as the children of Lot, the nephews of Abraham. We don't know how they saw themselves. We don't have texts that really talk about their origin stories. But in our origin story, as I mentioned before, they are freaky hillbillies whose grandfather is also their father. That's what happens to them. And let's get to the bottom guys, the guys below. Thus said the sovereign God, because Edom acted vengefully against the house of Judah and incurred guilt by wreaking revenge upon it. Assuredly, thus says the sovereign God, I will stretch out my hand against Edom and cut off from it human and animal. And I will lay it in ruins from Tamah to Dedan. They shall fall by the sword, and I shall wreak my vengeance on Edom through my people Israel, and they shall take action against Edom in accordance with my blazing anger. Shall know my vengeance, declares the sovereign God. Now, what's interesting about the Edomites is it seems as though they actually took advantage of the situation and actually killed some of our people. And that does seem to be, again, consistent with what we read about in the book of Lamentations. We read about it in some of the other prophets, that the Edomites actually came in and killed Judites and took property and didn't just sit back like the Ammonites and Moabites and go, ha ha ha, look at you guys, but actually took part in it. Now, interestingly, Ezekiel actually does justify it to some extent, but he does say that the Edomites acted vengefully against us, which is interesting because it basically means that he's, from their vantage point, that they had a reason to do this. Weird. Now, he doesn't give them a pass. He doesn't say, well, that's okay. They were just, from their side of it, they were acting vengefully. No, he says they're going to be punished for it. Why were they acting vengefully? Because they were our vassal state. They were controlled by us for a good chunk of time. Especially the kingdom of Judah was oftentimes had Edom under its thumb and taxed it and took advantage of it. And at least the way that the book of Genesis kind of sets it up, it all goes back to Jacob and Esau. And that's the justification for it. So interestingly, what do we do know? The book of Genesis says that one day Esau will remove the yoke, which leads us to believe that that line was either written when this had happened, or it was just an amazing prophecy that hit it right on the nail, right on the head right there with Edom finally breaking free. But it does say in Genesis when Isaac is giving the blessing to Esau, when Esau says, "Is there no blessing for me, Father?" He says, "Look, I already told your brother that you are going to serve him, but you will eventually remove the yoke." So that's way back in Genesis. Yeah, I'll show you. It's an interesting line because again, it's either a really nailed that prophecy, or again, it was written after. That's why when people say, "Well, when was that line in Genesis written?" For people who say, "Well, it had to have been written right around here when Edom." But remember, Edom had other times when they probably also removed the yoke. But at this point, so when we look back, yeah. I mean, he basically is saying let me see where it is. Here it is. Here's the blessing. Yeah. So here's the blessing. Esau heard his father's words, "Bless me too, Father." But he answered, "Your brother came with a guile and took away your blessing." This is chapter 27. "Bless me too, Father," Esau wept. And he said, "See, your abode shall enjoy the fat of the earth, the dew of the heaven, but by the sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restive, you shall break his yoke from your neck." That's verse 40. So at some point in time, again, during this period, he did in fact remove the yoke. So was this from this time, or is this the time that, again, but according to Ezekiel, at least, Edom was going to pay the price for what they did. So maybe they had a reason to be angry and take vengeance, but guess what? They'll know my vengeance with a capital M, which means God's vengeance, declares God. So those are the countries on that side. Now let's hit back to the west, to the coast. And here's the Philistines. "Thus said the sovereign God, because the Philistines in their ancient hatred acted vengefully and with utter scorn sought revenge and destruction. Assuredly, thus said the sovereign God, I will stretch out my hand against the Philistines and cut out the Cretim, the Kerethites, and wipe out the last survivors of the seacoast. I will wreak vengeance upon them by furious punishment. And when I inflict my vengeance upon them, they shall know that I am God. So it doesn't say much about them other than, again, they seem to be taking advantage of Israel and Judah's weakness to take a little bit from us. And again, they acted vengefully, which means that they see themselves now as the victim, which is interesting because the Philistines were oftentimes victimizing us. At least during the time of Samson, they were victimizing us. They were the ones in power. So at a certain point, their power recedes and they become, probably fairly weak city-states that are, where are they? They're in Gaza. They're in Ashkelon. They're in Ashdod. So parts of the area that are in Israel and parts of the area that are in Gaza, but one of their main cities is Gaza. So Ashdod, Ashkelon, both in Israel, Gath and Gaza and Ekron. Those are their five cities. And that's where the name Palestine comes from the Philistines. So now we've dealt with those people that we've heard a lot about. Now we're going to continue, if you will, along the coast. In the 11th year, on the 1st of the month, the word of God came to me. O mortal, because Tyre gloated over Jerusalem, again, aha, which in Hebrew is ha'ach, but aha, like that. The gateway of the peoples is broken and it has become mine. I shall be filled now that it is laid in ruins. Assuredly, thus said the sovereign God. I am going to deal with you, O Tyre. I will hurl many nations against you as the sea hurls its waves. And of course, Tyre is right on the seacoast. Actually, Tyre is an ancient port city. If it wasn't for Tyre, we probably wouldn't have the alphabet that we have in the West. That's where it came out of. It came out of Tyre, out of the Phoenician city. Part of Tyre was an island off the coast, just off the coast. And then part of it was the part of Lebanon just across, not far, half a mile, was where the coastal city was. So it was two parts of Tyre. Alexander the Great ends up laying siege to it, and there's some interesting stories and archaeological, discussions about it. There's even some documentaries about Alexander the Great's siege of Tyre. Tyre ends up being, at least the coastal part gets destroyed. Alexander's armies take the rubble from the coastal area and create a land bridge across to the island and lay siege and destroy the island. But after that, Tyre is no longer an island and a coast. It's just a peninsula sticking out in the water. And it's been like that for over 2,000 years. So Tyre is in fact destroyed. But let's look at so this is a coastal city, the Phoenician capital in modern day Lebanon, which even back then was a very cosmopolitan place. They shall destroy the walls of Tyre and demolish her towers, and I will scrape her soil off her and leave her a naked rock. Very visual, very visual. Destroying the walls, coming at it like the waves that hit it. That God's going to smash on it like the waves hitting this coastal town. She shall be in the heart of the sea, a place for drying nets, for I have spoken it, declares the sovereign God. She shall become the spoil of nations. Now, based on what we just read and the amount of text for each one of the previous ones, you'd think that would end there. It doesn't. We're just getting started on Tyre. And her daughter towns in the country shall be put to the sword, right? So the cities that are part of her sphere of influence, right? That's what it's called, the daughter towns, Uvnoteha, right? They shall be put to the sword, and they shall know that I am God. For thus said the sovereign God, I will bring from the north against Tyre, King Nebuchadnezzar, king of kings, with horses, chariots, and riders, a great mass of troops. And that did in fact happen. Nebuchadnezzar did lay siege to it. He didn't destroy it maybe as much as the Greeks did, which leads some questions of whether is this prophecy, how does this prophecy come true? But let's see. Your daughter towns in the country, you shall put to the sword. You shall erect towers against you, and cast up mounds against you, and raise a wall of bucklers against you. He shall turn the force of his battering rams against your walls, and smash your towers with axes. And that's Nebuchadnezzar himself. I mean, this isn't just the Kedemites. It actually calls out Nebuchadnezzar himself. From the cloud raised by his horses, dust shall cover you. From the clatter of riders and wheels and chariots, your walls shall shake. When he enters your gates, as those who enter a breached city, with the hoofs of his steeds, he shall trample your streets. He shall put your people to the sword. Your mighty pillars shall crash to the ground. They shall plunder your wealth and loot your merchandise. They shall raise your walls and tear down your splendid houses. And they shall cast into the water your stones and timber and soil. So you can see this city is very wealthy, and they're going to lose everything. And what's interesting is all the wealth that's concentrated in this commercial port. Stuff that's coming into this place that isn't normal stuff that you'd find in the sea. Stones, timber, and soil. Well, maybe stones, but not timber and soil. That's all stuff that's coming from the other parts of Lebanon, the cedars of Lebanon. This is a country that's a hub of commerce. So many things. What else is there? I will put an end to the murmur of your songs, and the sound of your lyres shall be heard no more. Which means that city was known for music, culture. I will make you a naked rock. You shall be a place for drying nets. You shall never be rebuilt, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign God. Now, this is where people go. But wait, the city was rebuilt. There's still a Tyre right now. There's a city called Tyre. It's a Lebanese city. It's predominantly Arab, but it's a city. So how does the city get rebuilt if God says it's not going to be rebuilt? Now, you can understand that it is destroyed by the Babylonians. It is destroyed by, later on, Alexander the Great. And the city is not ever going to be like it was. But the place, will it only be a place to lay your nets and let them dry out because there's nothing else there? I mean, that's like saying again, for the cities that he talked about in Ammon, I'm going to turn your cities into pastures for the sheep. I'm going to turn your city Tyre. It's no longer going to be a beautiful coastal city. It's going to be a place where fishermen throw their nets down, dry them out because there's nothing there. It's the same kind of image. There's nothing there. Well, it doesn't completely happen, but at least from the standpoint of destruction, it does happen. But again, there are people who say, but is Ezekiel 100% spot on? I don't know. It did get rebuilt, but doesn't mean it didn't get destroyed. But when people say, you shall never be rebuilt, so. Thus said the sovereign God to, it's not over, by the way. I still have another chapter. Thus said the sovereign God to Tyre, the coastland shall quake at the sound of your downfall. When the wounded groan, when slaughter is rife within you, all the rulers of the sea shall descend from their thrones. They shall remove their robes and strip off their embroidered garments. They shall clothe themselves with trembling, and they shall sit on the ground. They shall tremble every moment, and they shall be aghast at you. And they shall intone a dirge over you. And they shall say to you, how you have perished, you who are peopled from the seas. O renowned city, mighty on the sea were she and her inhabitants, who cast their terror on all its inhabitants. Now shall the coastlands tremble on the day of your downfall, and the coastlands by the sea be terrified at your end. So the effect of Tyre being destroyed is going to send shockwaves throughout all the coastal cities along the Mediterranean, or at least the Eastern Mediterranean, because Tyre was the capital for the Phoenician Empire, which means that their destruction would have sent ripples, huge ripples through the entire Phoenician network of towns. But that's what's going on here. And what's so interesting here is we really don't know what Tyre did that was that bad. It doesn't seem like they were as bad as necessarily these other countries that actually sent troops in and did this kind of stuff. But he has really got it against Tyre. And it's interesting because the implication is what they did that was so bad was they got rich off of it. And that is a real problem for Ezekiel. It's a real problem for God. Because that's what happened. It only seems like their crime was one of making money off of destruction. For thus said the sovereign God, when I make you a ruined city, like cities empty of inhabitants, when I bring the deep over you and its mighty waters cover you, then I will bring you down and with those who go down into the pit, right? That's what the word says, literally the pit. But the reason they capitalized it is like it's going to hell. To the people of old, I will install you in the netherworld. Well, there's the word flat out, netherworld, but I'm looking, it's the word literally in Hebrew is Eretz Tachtiot, which is the underworld, the world down below. And that's why I translated it as netherworld, with those that go down to the pit. And there's the word pit again, like the ruins of old, so that you shall not be inhabited and you shall not radiate the splendor in the land of the living, which almost is like your future is going to be in hell. Your city will be going down to hell. That's essentially what it says. I mean, what does your translation, Reverend Lynn, say? Does it say the pit and then netherworld? Yeah, well, that's a good translation, but again, you see what the point is. You're no longer Be'eretz Chaim, in the land of the living. Is that what it says, Mary? The land of life?
Shall set you to the low parts of the earth. And then it says.
Yeah, but then at the end it says, not in the land of the living. Not radiate splendor in the land of the living.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. I will make you a horror, and you shall cease to be. You shall be sought, but shall never be found again, declares the sovereign God. So it seems like really strong, like that it's over for Tyre. You know, that's pretty strong. It's not over yet, though. It's not over. Chapter 27. The word of God came to me. Now you, O mortal, intone a dirge over Tyre. Again, Ben Adam, right? That phrase he's often called by God. Say to Tyre, O you who dwell at the gateway of the sea, who trade with the peoples on many coastlands. Thus said the sovereign God. O Tyre, you boasted, I am perfect in beauty. Your frontiers were on the high seas. Your builders perfected your beauty. From cypress trees of Sinir, they fashioned your planks. They took a cedar from Lebanon to make a mast for you. From oak trees of Bashan, they made your oars. Of boxwoods from the isles of Kittim, inlaid with ivory, they made your decks. Embroidered linen from Egypt was the cloth that served for your sails. Of blue and purple from the coast of Elisha were your awnings. The inhabitants of Sidon and Arvad were your rowers. Your skilled men, O Tyre, were within you. They were your pilots. Gebal's elders and artisans within you, making your repairs. All the ships of the seas with their crews were in your harbor to traffic in your wares. Men of Paras, Lud, and Put were in your army, your warriors. They hung shields and helmets in your midst. They lent splendor to you. So as you see, your ships are made with all these wonderful fabrics, all these wonderful woods, all this wonderful detail in your ships. And then the people that are on the ships are made up of people from around the world. They brought together people from the Middle East, from North Africa, from Asia. All these people are together Paras, Lud, and Put. These are all over the place. Paras is Persia. Put is Somalia. You've got soldiers from all over the world, like the Romans. Your empire entire is totally commercial. It's totally based on money, but look what the money brought in, mercenaries. And beautiful ships. And the ships are made up from the great stuff from all over the place, including the beautiful wood of Lebanon. But not just Lebanon, right? And so look where these people are from. Men of Arvad and Chalech. This is in near Iran. Well, what's it, Iran today? Were upon your walls all around it. And men of Gamad were stationed in your towers. They hung their quivers all about your walls. They perfected your beauty. So they were on your ships as sailors, as mercenaries, merchant marines, if you will. And they were also in your cities. They were stationed in your towers. You had these great, like wherever the best soldiers were from, you brought those soldiers in. If they were great bowmen in these places, we brought them in. If they were strong guys for whatever, for rowing, we brought those guys in. That's what the Romans did too. Tarshish traded with you because of your wealth of all kinds of goods. They bartered silver, iron, tin, and lead for your wares. Javan, Tubal, and Meshech, they were your merchants. They trafficked with you in human beings and copper utensils. Anybody have an interesting translation for that besides human beings? But that's what it says, Nefesh Adam. Anybody have that in verse 13? Yeah.
Persons.
Yeah.
Okay,
Does it say trafficked or not? No.
they exchanged.
Yeah. Traded. I like the word trafficked here
Yeah, I do too.
because we call it human trafficking. That's what this was. Trading slaves. They traded slaves with you. And copper utensils, by the way. Expensive stuff. But that's what they traded with you. And who are these people? Look who Yavan, Tubal, and Meshech are. Yavan, that's the Ionians. That's the Greeks. Those are the ancient Greeks. So you can see how far Tyre's impact is. They're trading all around the Mediterranean, including into Europe. Meshech is also this part of Asia Minor. Tubal, also, again, one of the places it's mentioned in Genesis. This is where John likes all these nations that are mentioned. Well, they all came back here, not all, but 6 or 7 of them, no, more than that, they're mentioned here because we also have the people like Arvad and Halef. Not all these are mentioned there, Gamad, but many of them are mentioned in that list of 70 nations that are mentioned after the Tower of Babel. So when we talk about these different groups, gosh, the Tyrians, the Phoenicians are trading with all of them. They're trading with Beth Togarmah, which is also in Asia Minor. And we read about Tarshish, right? With the place where Jonah was going towards, right? Which is either Tarsus in Asia Minor in Turkey, or perhaps even Tarshish was all the way to Cadiz in Spain, because that's how far out this goes. That's how far out the Phoenician trade went. And of course, one of their most popular and powerful legacies, Carthage, which was Phoenician. The Carthaginians who ended up going to war against the Romans, they were Phoenician people. They were Canaanite Phoenician people who spoke a language very similar to Hebrew. So these people were all over the place and they were very popular. And that's 500 years after this, 450 years after is when the Carthaginians are. So that's the legacy of Phoenicia, of Tyre. So in Beth Togarmah, they're doing horses and riders and mules. The people of Dedan, which is closer. Where does it say for Dedan? Yeah, Dedan, out in the Greek Isles. Amazing. Were your merchants. Many coastlands traded under your rule and rendered you tribute in ivory, tusks, and ebony. Well, guess what? That's Africa, or someplace where they got elephants. Amazing. And you can see the ebony and the ivory. Huh. There you go. Aram traded with you because of your wealth of merchandise. That's Syria, right? Dealing with you in turquoise and purple stuff and embroidery and fine linen and coral and agate. Judah and the land of Israel were your merchants. That's us. We were your merchants. They trafficked with you in wheat of Minit and Panag, honey, oil, and balm. You see the note. We're not sure exactly what Minit or where Minit was. Does anybody have any translations for that? Any notes for them of where it says Minit is?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
I think the translation of traffic is interchangeable. It's not nefarious in this.
No, but when you're talking about a place, a way of doing
Commerce traffic.
yeah, but when it comes to humans, bartering in humans,
I understand.
you could say that, but trafficking, yeah,
Again, with wheat.
uh-huh,
Just a commodity.
yes,
So
yes, but the question of how to translate it, it is the same word. Let me just see if they're always they use different words. That's why they're using different words sometimes. Trading is the word sochar, which is trading or whatever. And then rochal is the trading, is what they're translating as trafficking. So that's why they use that's why they use that word in different places. There's sochar, which they use the word trade. So yes, the words that they're using, sometimes they're wherever you see the word trafficked, it's this word right here, rochal, the root, rochalayach. So that's why they're using different, and they're using the word trading. And again, they're using them because they decided they're going to translate those words differently. Again, probably some of these places we don't know for sure, right? So some people, you'll see commentators that say that these places, Minit and Panag, are all the way up to, places like Ukraine and what wasn't called Ukraine yet, but the areas of Hungary and the steppes of Europe where they had wheat, or fields like wheat, because they had them in Egypt and they had them in a few places, but not really in the Middle East. Maybe some part of Asia Minor, but again, balm and honey and oil, some of those things would have come from maybe India, as far away as India. You'll see sometimes people will say that Minit is India or China. But again, these are all places where we know the Phoenicians went to. So when we look at the map of how big the Phoenicians, the wealth and the empire of commerce that they had, again, for the most part, they sent traders, they sent merchants to represent themselves. It's not like they conquered the places. They established commercial outposts. They were the first great merchant nation, like the Venetians later on. They would oftentimes hire mercenaries, but it's not like they had to have a lot of people in these places. They weren't trying to conquer them. They were just trying to control the money. But we know that the Phoenicians went pretty far. And there's even a theory that somehow they made it to the New World. We don't have any evidence of it, but their ships, I mentioned this to you before, somebody made a Phoenician ship, a Tarshish ship, as they call it, and sailed all the way to America from North Africa to prove that a Phoenician ship could cross the Atlantic. So it's pretty wild. So because of your wealth of merchandise, because of your great wealth, Damascus traded with you in Helbon wine and white wool. Vidan and Javan, that's again whenever we see the Yavan, they're talking about Greece. They're talking about the Ionians, which is pretty far. I mean, the Ionian coast is not Rhodes. It's not Crete. It's not the Greek Isles, or Greek speaking places like in the Aegean. Ionian coast is Greece. It's like mainland Greece. That's far. They traded for your wares. Vidan, Javan, and from Uzal traded with for your wares. They trafficked with you in polished iron, Cassia, and Calamus. Dedan was your merchant and saddlecloth for writing. I mean, this really gives us a very detailed list of where these goods came from. It's amazing that, again, we have this book of the Bible that tells us where commerce was going. Here's
This translation.
yeah.
used to footnote with the names of the cities, but it says things like early figs. It gives
Interesting.
produce from
For rather than well,
just sort of
yeah, I mean, they're trying to translate what I mean, some of the stuff I guess is somewhat open to, it's kind of open to interpretation of what, what it is that they're talking about. So yeah, I think in some cases, it's a translation issue where they're saying, well, what is what it is,
the name of the place, it tells what came from.
what came from there. Yeah. Yeah, it's a, some of the things I guess are somewhat based on what we think we've reconstructed as a, looking at what these different things are. I mean, some of them, like iron, we know for a fact what that is, but, and some of it, by the way he lays it out was also probably a little bit poetic. Arabia. Now here's an interesting one. Arabia and all Kedar's chiefs were traders under your rule. They traded with you in lambs, rams, and goats, which are, assuming that these guys in Arabia are herders of animals. But it shows you that it goes all the way to Arabia. And essentially at this point, they're basically saying the Arabs, and we don't see the word Arab used a lot. We see the word Ishmaelites, but actually to refer to an area as Arav, which is what it is right here, Arav on Kedar, it's actually calling them Arabs, which again is not usually what they were called at that time. Sheba, the merchants from Sheba and Ramah were your merchants. They bartered for your wares, all the finest spices, all kinds of precious stones and gold. Haran, Kana, and Eden, which is again is the word for Eden, it says Eden. The merchants of Sheba, Assyria, and Hilmad traded with you. Now, let's look to see if there's any actual interesting commentary on the fact that it says, it doesn't actually, because here he's just saying Assyria and Media. Do your notes say anything interesting about the fact that it actually mentions Eden? Nope, nothing there. Look, one of the things that we could say is that Eden, based on this list of places, Haran, Kana, and Eden, assuming that it's referring to Gan Eden as the same kind of area, is actually then in Arabia, in the Arabian area, or in that region of the Middle East, near Syria, kind of in the desert almost in that area. What's interesting is that the way Gan Eden is the Garden of Eden is described in the Bible, it's the confluence of these four great rivers, including the Tigris, Euphrates, the Nile, and another river, we're not exactly sure which one it is, the Gihon, that those four rivers are where it says Eden, out of Eden flew these four rivers flowed from flowed. That's the word, right? Flowed from. What does the translation say? Something like that. Flowed from Eden, four river. Was confluence of four rivers. I don't know how the translations are, but what you would look at, and people have speculated that based on that description, geographical description, that would place it kind of in Arabia somewhere. Maybe some people have speculated it's Oman or Bahrain, one of those areas. But yeah, there's people who've been searching for Eden based on the description, Genesis, and also this description here, which seems to say that it's in this area somewhere in the midst of this area, Sheba, Assyria, and Chilmad.
This
Is
is an incredible list, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it is showing you that Ezekiel is, I mean, in the process, Ezekiel is giving us a whole trade map of the Middle East of the time.
So cosmopolitan.
Yep. And I mean, like, it just goes on and on. I mean, there's verses upon verses of what they're doing here, which, you know, I mean, he's calling them out, but he's saying how powerful they are, and they're making money off of everybody, is what he's essentially saying, right? These were your merchants in choice fabrics, embroidered cloaks of blue, and many colored carpets tied up with cords and preserved with cedar among your wares. And again, we know that Tyre was the producer of this beautiful blue dye, right? And it says embroidered cloaks of blue, which is what we know, one of the most important things that they're famous for, this thing we call techelet. And it's what we kind of do when we make the blue on the talit. This techelet color, which they got from the murex shell, from sucking out this ingredient from the snail shell. And that's what Tyre, from what we know, that's the only thing that they produced themselves. They were very close to this other thing that it says, right, which were cedars, right? These arozim, which are the cedars of Lebanon. Those are in their area. So it says they were your merchants in choice fabrics, right? But these are your stuff. This is what you make. But it says the ships of Tarshish were in the service of your trade, which seems to imply that the Tarshish ships weren't necessarily owned or created by Tyre, but controlled by Tyre. But again, we oftentimes look at this as ships that can go as far as Tarshish, which again could be the fact that they were owned by the people of Tarshish or built by the people of Tarshish, or could go to Tarshish, but they were controlled by you. You had the most powerful ships of the time. And so it says, so you were full and richly laden on the high seas. Your oarsmen brought you out into the mighty waters. The tempest wrecked you on the high seas. Your wealth, your wares, your merchandise, your sailors and your pilots, those who made your repairs, those who carried on your traffic, and all the warriors within you, all the multitude within you, shall go down to the depths of the sea on the day of your downfall. The outcry of your pilots, the billows shall heave. And all your oarsmen and mariners and all the pilots of the sea shall come down from their ships and stand on the ground. They shall raise their voices over you and cry out bitterly. They shall cast dust on their heads and strew ashes on themselves on your account. They shall make bald patches on their heads, and they shall gird themselves with sackcloth. They shall weep over you, brokenhearted, with bitter lamenting. They shall intone a dirge over you as they wail and lament for you thus. Who was like Tyre when she was silenced in the midst of the sea? So all those people that you've been working with, all of them will go down with you. You are not just going down yourselves, you're taking everybody else with you. All those other countries, all those other peoples that you dealt with. When your wares were unloaded from the seas, you satisfied many peoples with your great wealth and merchandise. You enriched the kings of the earth. But when you were wrecked on the seas and the deep waters sank your merchandise and all the crew aboard you, and all the inhabitants of the coastlines are appalled over you. Their kings are aghast, their faces contorted. The merchants among the peoples hissed at you. You have become a horror and have ceased to be forever. Now, that is an amazing prophecy against a nation that is really nothing other than, as you read, the economic powerhouse. As far as responsible for killing us, for being an ally of the Babylonians, it doesn't seem like it. It just seems like they've been making money off everybody.
But were they like vultures picking at the corpse?
it doesn't seem like, even in this case, it doesn't say that specifically, but the implication, again, we can draw this idea, is that they made money from it. And that alone is enough for Ezekiel to say they're going to be called out on this, which again makes us think about countries that have profited over the years from other people's misfortune. Country that I'm thinking about, it rings most true, and it took a long time for them to be held accountable, was Switzerland.
Mhm.
Took years and years and years. And finally, because of a janitor at one of the banks, one righteous dude who found these files before they were going to be destroyed, that proved how the Swiss banks laundered Nazi money. And they finally in the 90s, 40 years later, finally were held accountable for this. A little bit like that. You know, they made money on this misfortune of other people. It's not over. It's not the whole chapter 28, but the people of Tyre they're not done. Again, it's just so amazing because all this detail, pages of this, we didn't really see it there were a little mention of them in Jeremiah, but nothing like this is completely disproportionate. There's like 3 chapters against, they call these,
Well,
it doesn't make sense. Ezekiel, these are called Ezekiel's prophecies against the nations. I'd almost say it's the prophecies against Tyre. I mean, the other ones get thrown in, but they don't even add up to one chapter. This is just chapters upon chapters of condemnations of Tyre. And we get to this chapter, it starts to kind of sum it up better, but man, he's obsessed with it, or God's obsessed with it. The word of God came to me, O mortal, say to the prince of Tyre, thus said the sovereign God, because you have been so haughty and have said, I am God, I sit enthroned like a God in the heart of the seas, whereas you are not a God, but a human, though you deemed your mind equal to God's. Yes, you are wiser than Daniel. In no matter can anyone compare to you. By your shrewd understanding, you have gained riches and have amassed gold and silver in your treasuries. Now, you notice the note here. It says you are wiser than Daniel. Now, we've had another reference to Daniel. The problem is, and you're going to see this right now, as for Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar came to make him a god and prostrate himself before Daniel and ordered that they should offer a meal and offering and sacrifice the sweet odors to him. But he did not accept it upon himself. Yet you make yourself God. So they're finding in the book of Daniel that Daniel rises in Nebuchadnezzar's group. The problem is that Daniel, the Daniel that we know about in the book of Daniel is a much later book. And at least according to the book, it happens after the exile and the destruction of Jerusalem already happened. So most likely, this is not the same Daniel. And Daniel isn't really known in the Bible for his wisdom. He's known for his faith. He's known for his miracles. He's known for his wonders. He's thrown into the lion's den and the lions don't eat him. But his wisdom doesn't seem to be like that. It seems to be that God protects him, saves him because of his faith. He doesn't eat, he does things that are in some ways kind of like also a little foreshadowing of Jesus a little bit. But he doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to be the main thing. Hidden knowledge doesn't seem to be that. It doesn't seem to be the thing. So most of the time we kind of read this now is that it's referring to another Daniel, which also we already read about, a reference to, said Daniel and Job. It's probably a reference to this other Daniel who we don't know who he was, but he was like a character who was known for his wisdom. We just don't have we don't get the reference.
Because it's suggesting here that it's not Daniel, the lion's den.
So your commentary says what we
Right.
believe today,
Says,
but Rashi,
the story of Daniel.
yes, what does it say about it?
Church, widows and orphans.
Yeah, and it exists, it says in ancient Near Eastern text, right, or something? Yeah,
Yes.
we found a story in an ancient Near Eastern text about a guy named Daniel who's a judge, who's a wise judge, and we think maybe that's a reference to the same Daniel, which is the actual way that it's written in Hebrew. You can see right here, it's written Daniel and not Daniel. But yeah, Rashi didn't know that, and the rabbis didn't know that, so they're not constantly. It's not like they're obsessed with Daniel, but they don't like people who are mentioned that we don't know anything about. And they also didn't know that there was another Daniel. They didn't know there was a Daniel in other texts. So it couldn't be for them. It had to be Daniel. So the Tyrians are compared to Daniel, or at least the king of Tyre, or prince of Tyre. By your shrewd understanding, you've gained riches, and you have amassed gold and silver in your treasuries. By your shrewdness in trade, you've increased your wealth. You've grown haughty because of your wealth. That's kind of the issue. Assuredly, thus said the sovereign God, because you have deemed your mind equal to a god's, I swear I will bring against you strangers, the most ruthless of nations. They shall unsheathe their swords against your prized shrewdness, and they shall strike down your splendor. They shall bring you down to the pit. In the heart of the sea you shall die, the death of the slain. It's not exactly a great translation of this idea, the death of the slain, but definitely the word death is emphasized and is repeated in different ways. Shochet is, destruction or death, like a butcher. And Mata and Mot are also all there. In the ancient Near East, Mot was the god of death, was the angel of death. We still say in Hebrew, the Malach HaMavis, or in Yiddish, the Malach HaMavis, or in Hebrew, Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. It's still personified somewhere, but again, it's like the angel of death is going to be on you. But also, again, the fact that it says they're going to go down in the waters too. The heart, Lev Yamin. Will you still say, I'm a God before your slayers, when you are proved a human and not a God? At the hands of those who strike you down, by the hands of the strangers you shall die. The death of the uncircumcised, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign God. Now, you notice that it says the death of the uncircumcised, according to popular beliefs, males who die uncircumcised and persons left unburied are relegated to the lower level of the netherworld. Well, what that seems to imply is that at least the people of maybe that they were normally supposed to be circumcised and they weren't, which means that maybe that people of Tyre were circumcised. It's difficult to know whether it's just saying they're going to hell, they're going to deep hell, or they would have normally.
Theology of the pit or hell or Sheol.
How well known was it?
Well developed was it?
Doesn't seem very well developed, but it seems developed enough that wherever they're going, it's not a good place. And again, it doesn't seem to necessarily be like hell, but it does seem to be dark. And however it's understood is it's a dark place, and that perhaps there are levels or depths of hell, in the sense that the further you are away from the light or away from earth, the darker it is. But it seems like you sink pretty low. The other place we get that a little bit is in the book of Jonah, when Jonah describes sinking down to the depths of Sheol, and he goes down and he feels like he's going down and down and down. And it feels like, there's a depth, there's a sense of the depth that it could be. And again, when he says, you know, I'm in the heart of the seas, it's like literally like sunk, you know, I'm sunk so low. I'm not like floating. I'm down in the midst of the seas. It's all around me. So
You know, Riley, that begs the question in regards to another world and the discussion of life after death.
yeah, there's not a lot in it. That's the point. And you got to be careful what to make from this, because it doesn't say like, you know, well, and you're punished for all eternity or whatever, but it definitely seems as though, and again, it's not good, right? It's not where you want to be. But what's weird about it, and again, we have so little about it in the Bible. And so we have that one reference to Samuel being in the netherworld. So what's weird about it is, why is Samuel in the netherworld? Why is he coming up out of the ground? Well, it seems as though perhaps, it's difficult to know, but based on very limited references, and again, this is poetic. It's clearly not necessarily like the literal meaning, but it seems to be that everybody, well, you're not going to like it. Everybody is in the netherworld. It's only the people who are at the top of the netherworld, like Samuel, are in a better place. The further down you go, it gets worse. So there is no necessarily upper place. It's all in the ground. And it's just a question of how far in the ground you go. So, you know, where do we even get this from? Is that, you know, maybe because in the Near East, especially in places like Egypt, yeah, the closer you are to the earth, the better. And so if you're buried there and you're there where you're buried, you're close enough to earth so you can almost see it. But the further you go down, there's no light anymore. It's all darkness. And it seems as though like you don't want to go down low, which is kind of like, you know, like seeing that, you know, it's all down below, which again, people don't want to hear that. They want to think that everything is down below. But it seems at least the descriptions in the Bible, there is no description in the Bible that we have read that people are up in heaven, that the people are upstairs. I'm just saying, we haven't read it, meaning and we're not going to, that there are people in the Bible that are standing in heaven looking down at us. I'm just saying, the direction it seems that even the good people go, like Samuel, who's really good, is that they're down below. Maybe not too far below, but they're below. And maybe so again, that's why some people say, well, maybe Samuel did something we don't know about, which is why he's down there right now. And maybe eventually he goes up. It was right after he died. He had just died when Saul went and asked the witch to bring him up. But it's difficult to know. I mean, there's just so little there.
Feels like the Christian original sin.
Well, yeah, there are people who say that that Samuel couldn't be elevated because he had sinned. The problem is that we don't really know what it is. It's not that he didn't. We just know we doesn't say he did or he didn't. The problem is that, so if that's the case, which there are people who say that Samuel is in the netherworld because he is not with Jesus. But one problem with that interpretation, or that's not necessarily wrong, but we know for a fact, we know according to the Christian Bible that Jesus appears with Moses. So why is Moses in heaven but not Samuel? Moses didn't have Jesus. Samuel is closer to Jesus than Moses was chronologically. So why does Moses get to be with Jesus but not Samuel? Look, it's difficult to know, if Moses and Elijah are with him. Elijah's after Samuel, but why would Samuel not be with him? So it's difficult to know. I mean, again, some people would say, well, that's, God has only a few people from the Bible in heaven before Jesus, but I don't know. It's just nothing there. I mean, the problem is when there's so little there, and people don't like to hear that, but I mean, we just read 2 chapters of prophecies against Tyre. There's nothing about heaven. I hate to tell you, but it's not there. There's 2 chapters about Tyre and how much wealth Tyre has. Bible doesn't talk about it, at least the Hebrew Bible. And I got news for you. The Christian Bible don't talk about it too much either. There's not that much in the Bible about what happens after we die. It's just not there in the Bible. I'm not saying it's not in the Midrash. It is in rabbinic literature. It is in the pseudepigrapha. It is in Christian fathers. It is in other stuff. It's just not in the Bible. So that's why I can't throw you a bone.
Let's hear it.
I'd like to throw you a bone, but I can't. So yes.
11 seems to me that verse 11.
Yeah.
So, so many Christians would glom onto that.
What that people
The word of the Lord came to me, Son of Man, rise.
yeah. Well, we're gonna get to it. Wait, verse
11.
okay. So the word of God came to me, O mortal, intoned a dirge over the king of Tyre and say to him, thus said the sovereign God, you were a seal of perfection, full of wisdom and flawless in beauty. You were in Eden, and there it says right there, Eden, Gan Elohim. Every precious stone was your adornment. And again, Gan Eden then is a place that actually is on earth. Every precious stone was your adornment, carnelian, chrysolite, amethyst, beryl, lapis lazuli, jasper. Sapphire, turquoise, emerald, and gold, beautifully wrought for you, mined for you, prepared the day you were created.
Why are we laughing? What did I do?
No,
Did I do something?
no, going through the list of jewels, right?
Oh.
So,
I know, but,
Through in the modern.
yeah.
oh, I must have missed that. Okay.
So sapphire is sapphire, right? Right. That's the only one that you can look at and say, oh, that's the Hebrew that's also in English. So,
Carbuncle?
yeah. So these are the stones, these are the precious stones that people are thinking about. And look, in Eden, this description of, again, of almost heaven with these precious stones. I created you as a cherub with outstretched and shielding wings, and you resided on God's holy mountain. You walked among stones of fire. This is the people of Tyre. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created until wrongdoing was found in you. By your and listen to this, by your far-flung commerce, you were filled with lawlessness and you sinned. So I have struck you down from the mountain of God, and I have destroyed you, O shielding cherub. For among the stones of fire, from among the stones of fire, you grew haughty because of your beauty. You debased your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I have cast you to the ground. I have made you an object for kings to stare at. By the greatness of your guilt, through the dishonesty of your trading, you desecrated your sanctuaries. So I made a fire issue from you, and it has devoured you. I've reduced you to ashes on the ground in the sight of all who behold you. All who knew you among the peoples are appalled at your doom. You have become a horror, and you have ceased to be forever. And again, look at this. That is the end of Tyre. But what's so interesting about this, again, is that Tyre seems to have had it all. It seems to have had the wealth. It seems to have had this culture. It seems to have had, God's even liked it. God even loved it. Calls it like a cherub, one of these holy beings. And what's interesting about it is that their craftsmen are the ones who built the temple. So the Kruvim and some of the artistry that was in the temple of Solomon was built by these Tyrian people. And because of that, haughtiness, because of your power that you turned against other people, you're going to be devoured. You're going to be destroyed. Now, what's interesting is this next prophecy, because it says the word of God came to me, O mortal, set your face on Sidon, and prophesy against her. This is the next town over. This is another town in Phoenicia. Tyre and Sidon are like co-cities, the twin cities of Phoenicia. Thus, right? Said the sovereign God, I'm going to deal with you, O Sidon. I will gain glory in your midst, and they shall know that I am God. When I wreak punishment upon her and show myself holy through her, I will let pestilence loose against her and bloodshed into her streets. And the slain shall fall in her midst when the sword comes upon her from all sides, and they shall know that I am God. Then shall the house of Israel no longer be afflicted with prickling briars and lacerating thorns from all the neighbors who despise them. And they shall know that I am the sovereign God. And look at that. The people who are her neighbors are the ones who are causing problems for Israel. They're like prickling, they're like thorns. They're like tearing into their flesh. Yep. Thus said the sovereign God, when I have gathered the house of Israel from among the peoples among which they've been dispersed, and have shown myself holy through them in the sight of the nations, they shall settle on their own soil, which I gave to my servant Jacob, and they shall dwell in it in security. They shall build houses and plant vineyards, and shall dwell in it in security, when I have meted out punishment to all those about them who despise them. And they shall know that I am the eternal one. I am their God. Whew. Not something that's, when people want to know, again, what happens, it's difficult for people to say, oh, is this going to happen again? Because Ezekiel is being told God's going to return the people back from all the places that they've been dispersed. And this is not the first time we've read this. And we're about to get, in a couple of weeks, to the famous Valley of the Dry Bones, chapter 37. This is a message of hope. And so we've been reading a lot about the punishment. Now we read this. And we're going to read one more chapter. We're going to read this chapter of chapter 29, which is more prophecies against the nations. But what's the hope? They shall dwell in security, and they shall build houses and plant vineyards. That's a phrase we get a lot. They shall dwell in security. Now, it does say God is meting out the punishment. It doesn't say that they're going to mete out the punishment, but it is going to come against all those who despise them. All the people around them. And that's what it says. All the people about them. Nisov Tam, the people that surround them, all their neighbors. All right. So let's look at this prophecy, which says in the 10th year, on the 12th day of the month. So when we get into a prophecy like this, where it starts off with a different time that it came, not just, and this is another prophecy, and this is another prophecy. It seems like this was grouped together intentionally with this line, which again, we go back a few chapters, it tells us the date the prophecy against Tyre came. And this prophecy is against the Egyptians. O mortal, turn your face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and all Egypt. Speak these words, thus said the sovereign God. I'm going to deal with you, O Pharaoh, king of Egypt, mighty monster, sprawling in your channels, who said, my Nile is my own, I made it for myself. What's your translation for mighty monster? Sea monster? What does it say there? Dragon, yeah. What is yours? Great dragon, yeah. That's Tanim Hagadol, which we translate as mighty monster. Could be a really big crocodile. One of the symbols of the Nile is the crocodile, the god Sobek, who's represented as a crocodile-headed god. But it's clearly talking about the Nile, right? And the channels that come off of the Nile, the way the Egyptians irrigated their country with the channel system across the Nile, across their country, with spreading the Nile out as far as they could, so they could have water in their, throughout, and then grow wheat, and grow crops off of it. Look what's going to happen to that monster. I will put hooks in your jaws and make the fish of your channels cling to your scales. I will haul you up from your channels with all the fish of your channels clinging to your scales. So this seems like, pretty great water beast that's brought up. Dragon is fine as long as you understand it as a sea dragon or something that's in the waters. Some people say that it's like a hippo. Doesn't seem like a hippo. This is something that's got scales on it, that's for sure. But it comes up with the fish too, right? And I will fling you into the desert with all the fish of your channels, and you shall be left lying in the open, ungathered and unburied. I have given you as food to the beasts of the earth and the birds of the sky. So that imagery is very powerful, because out of the waters, right? I take this beast, I take Egypt, essentially slaughter it out. Their power, their army, their wealth is going to be left open, but it comes out of the water, and then it becomes food for the beasts of the earth and the sky. So you have the waters, the earth, and the sky all there. Those three levels of existence, or cosmos, or the three biospheres, whatever you want to call them. They're all in that prophecy. Then all the inhabitants of Egypt shall know that I am God, because you are a staff of reed to the house of Israel.
Reeds. Like
Yeah.
sea reeds.
Now we know the country's full of reeds. And what we saw before in Jeremiah and in Ezekiel is that they say the Egyptians are going to be like a reed. You can't rely on a reed. You can't put your weight and support yourself on a reed. It's going to go right through you, right? Right? What's going to happen to you when you grasp that reed? When they grasp you with their hand, you would splinter and wound all their shoulders. And when they leaned on you, you would break and make all their loins unsteady. That's what happens when you rely on an unsteady and an unsound partner. And that's what Israel did. We counted on you, Egypt, and you were not there for us. You hurt us. We thought you were going to help us, and you hurt us. Assuredly, thus said the sovereign God, lo, I will bring a sword against you, and will cut off human and animal from you, so that the land of Egypt shall fall into desolation and ruin. And they shall know that I am God, because he boasted, the Nile is mine and I made it. So again, the haughtiness of the Pharaoh. Assuredly, I'm going to deal with you and your channels, and I will reduce the land of Egypt to utter ruin and desolation, from Migdol to Syene, which is literally from northern Egypt all the way down to the border of what today is Sudan, all the way down to the Aswan, right? All the way to the border of Cush. And if you see the note here, it's going to say from north to south, it's modern day Aswan, the Aswan Dam, right by the border of Sudan. No human foot shall traverse it, and no animal foot shall traverse it, and it shall remain uninhabited for 40 years. And again, 40 years, like in the wilderness, right? For 40 years, I will make the land of Egypt the most desolate of desolate lands, and its cities shall be the most desolate of ruined cities. And I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations and disperse them throughout the countries. So there's going to be an Egyptian exile. Egyptians are going to be exiled, just like the Israelites. Interesting, because again, we were exiles in Egypt for a while, right? For a few hundred years. And now they're going to be exiles too. So when we were there as slaves, now they're going to be going out as slaves. Further, thus said the sovereign God, After a period of 40 years, I will gather the Egyptians from the peoples among whom they were dispersed. I will restore the fortunes of the Egyptians and bring them back to the land of their origin, the land of Patros. And you can see again here, it's going to say southern Egypt. And there they shall be a lowly kingdom. So they're going to come back. They'll be restored. It shall be the lowliest of all the kingdoms and shall not lord it over the nations again. I will reduce the Egyptians so that they shall have no dominion over the nations. That's true. That did happen. The Egyptians, after the Babylonian destruction, never again were a dynasty or a force to be reckoned with. Within 200 years of this, the Egyptians are completely run over by the Greeks, by Alexander the Great. And I mean, literally 150 years later, but the Egyptians never recovered from the Babylonians. They never recovered. And so the dynasties that were rebuilt after this, after the Babylonian destruction, never emerged out of that. And when Alexander the Great's army took over and Alexander died, he left, and of course, Alexandria named after him. He liked Egypt, but he didn't live that long. He turned it over to his general Ptolemy. And that became the Ptolemy dynasty. That's right. Cleopatra being the last queen of that dynasty. But the dynasty of the Ptolemies, Ptolemaic dynasty, lasted for 300 years.
And they were Greeks.
But they were Greek. And understand that they were Greek. Did they start looking more Egyptian? Probably, as they intermarried with the local patrician type people and local dynasty. They started probably looking a little Egyptian from the standpoint of like what Egyptians looked like at that time. But they were Greek. They weren't Egyptian. They styled themselves sometimes. Cleopatra sometimes dressed up as an Egyptian, called herself a goddess and used the Egyptian styles. They liked those. Romans liked them too, but they weren't Egyptian. They were Greek. So this is the end of this mighty kingdom that was mighty for thousands of years by this point, never recovered. And they never again had dominion, and never again shall they be the trust of the house of Israel, recalling its guilt and having turned to them. And they shall know that I am the sovereign God. So that is a prophecy against the Egyptians because, and the next line really tells us that this is another set of prophecies, right? In the 27th year, on the first day of the month, the word of God came to me. O mortal, king of Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, has made his army expend vast labor on Tyre. Every head is rubbed bald and every shoulder scraped. But he and his army have had no return for the labor he expended on Tyre. Assuredly, thus said the sovereign God, I will give the land of Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. He shall carry off her wealth and take her spoil and seize her booty, and she shall be the recompense of his army. So what it just told us is it brought these two prophecies about Tyre and Egypt together, which is that Tyre cost Nebuchadnezzar so much in his siege that he had to conquer Egypt in order to pay his troops for what happened during that siege. Couldn't get it from Israel. Judah wasn't wealthy enough for it to be plundered, but Egypt was. And so he went to Egypt to carry off Egypt's wealth. And as the wage for which he labored, for what they did for me, I give him the land of Egypt, declares the sovereign God. Which means that at least according to Ezekiel, at least this book is telling us that God essentially let Nebuchadnezzar conquer Egypt to pay for what he did to Tyre. Again, at this point, Israel has not been fully conquered, which means that Nebuchadnezzar just went right past Jerusalem, didn't destroy it yet, but did destroy huge chunks of Egypt. On that day, I will endow the house of Israel with strength, and you shall be vindicated among them, and they shall know that I am God. And that phrase that we read at the end of every chapter so far today, and they shall know that I am God. This seems to imply that what happens in their destruction, it's important for them to now know that this is God that did it. Now, what does this mean? That's why we call it the prophecies against the nations, because this isn't for the Israelites, for Judites to know. It's for the people of those countries to know that God has punished them. Did they care? I don't know. Did it matter to them that God has prophesied their destruction? We don't know. We don't know that it mattered to them, but Ezekiel knows that the message is for the Judites. It's for them to know, to some extent, as God is concerned with their screwing up, God is also concerned with these Gentile nations screwing up. So we're not done with we're not done with that, because there's more prophecies against the nations. Yeah.
Is there a 21st verse?
Yeah. Yeah. On that day, I will endow the house of Israel with
Mine
strength.
is so different.
Really? What does it say?
On that day, I will cause a horn to spring forth to the house of Israel, and I will open your lips among them, and they will know that I am. That's really quite.
It says it in here. It says, endow the house of Israel with strength, and you shall, yeah. It says literally, you shall cause a horn to sprout from the house of Israel, and I will grant you the opening of the mouth. So the phrase in Hebrew, Bayom Hahu, on that day, and it says a tzemach keren, which is a horn sprouting out. So tzemach, we talked about before, is a branch, or is usually used for,
Branch of Jesse.
yeah, we say tzemach Yeshai, or tzemach David, branch of David. We said branch Davidians, where the phrase comes from. But keren here definitely means like a horn. So the literal idea of it is that something is sprouting forth, like not just a branch, but something strong that's sprouting out of the land of Israel, from the house of Israel, not the land of Israel, the house of Israel. And
the lips of Israel will speak of God.
yeah, it could be the lips, or it could be the opening of the horn on the other side. So what does yours say, Mary? Yeah, I mean, that's what it says. Pitchon peh is the opening of the mouth. But even here, they're saying the opening of the, oh, no, it says opening of the mouth. It
Means, might mean
it is the idea here is that Israel is going to come back, and out of this destruction of for the Egyptians is going to be Israel is going to benefit from it. Israel will benefit from it. Now, again, as I said, the next chapters are more. The next chapter is about Egypt, and the whole next chapter is about Egypt. The next chapter after that is also about Egypt. And nope. Yep. And then the next chapter after that, also Egypt. And then I think at the very end of this, the very end of it, you get let me just see. No, it's still Egypt. I think there's one more.
34 is against Israel.
1 second. No. We'll still have 33. 1 second. There too is let me just make sure. Yeah, this is the other nations. So the end of chapter 32, come to the end of chapter 32, and then chapter 33 is different. So chapter 32, still talking about Egypt, actually, all the way through chapter 32, kind of, but other countries are mentioned. But chapter 33 is different. Chapter 33 is a very different chapter. So next week, I won't be here because I'll be in the land of Israel. But I will I am going to try to do class from Israel. I am going to try. So don't say we're not doing it yet, because I'm going to try to see if we can do it from Israel. Yeah, it's not going to be, it's not impossible that I can do it that day. It's just a question of where I'm going to be, because it's the day actually that I, believe it or not, actually the day that I come home. So on the 14th, I leave on the night, late night at the 14th. So I leave at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's just a question of where I'll be. So I don't know yet. I mean, I know roughly where I'll be, but I don't know where I'll be after I leave Tel Aviv that day. There is class tomorrow night.
Here?
Yes.
Okay, because the class was wrong.
What did it say?
It says, like,
Oh, did it?
for November 1st.
It shouldn't.
It says November 1st.
Oh, that's wrong then. So chapter 33 is actually back to Israel. And then chapter 34, we change. Which is, we're going to okay, good. Well, that's something wrong. So chapter 33 flips a little bit, because it goes back to Israel. And then the rest of the chapters of Ezekiel, we're going to be moving into, I wouldn't say necessarily hopeful chapters, but they're chapters where we start to have a message of what's going to happen in the future. What's interesting about Ezekiel is he also talks about what's going to happen to the other nations in the future too. So unlike the other prophets who kind of deal with, we read Jeremiah talked about the other nations, but he doesn't really talk about, he talks about them getting it. He talks about them getting punished. Next week through chapter 32, and again, we'll read chapter 33 as well. That's where chapter 33 is, I'm not going to ruin it, but one of the reasons why I wanted to do it from there is because chapter 33 is where Ezekiel finally gives the notice that it's over, Jerusalem is over. That's chapter 33. And then chapter 34 on is the restoration. The most famous being, and we'll probably read it the week after, is the Valley of the Dry Bones in chapter 37. But again, then we get into the Gog and Magog prophecies, which deal with other nations. And then we deal with this vision of a new Jerusalem that he sees being built, which is pretty wild because it doesn't get rebuilt. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but he does give dimensions of a new Jerusalem that is, some people say, must have to come in the future because it hasn't happened yet. Because the dimensions of the Jerusalem that he sees rebuilt is quite big. So that kind of lays out what's going to happen in the next 20 or so chapters, folks, is it does start to get, after next week at the judgments against the other, the rest of the judgments against Egypt and the destruction of Jerusalem that finally happens, then the rest of it flips. And so chapter 34 to the end is, it's going to get better. After Ezekiel is the prophet Hosea, who is got some, no, it's about 10 chapters, but it's, none of the other ones will ever, none of them were like this. But what's going to be interesting is when Hosea is, you think Ezekiel has a tough life and Jeremiah has a tough life. Hosea may win, may get both of them. All right, folks, please stay safe, and I will try to stay safe. But stay safe here and stay safe wherever you are, because it's definitely, we live in some strange times.
News gonna be at 2,000 news.
I will tell you this. I don't know who's going to be on the news. I don't know what they're going to use, because you never know. But and I don't know when it's going to run, but every single email is, every single thing I got. And it's got NBC News just contacting me. Anyways, I don't know what'll be on, but it'll be on. All right, folks, take care.